So if you remember from the first declension video, our definition of a declension is a group of nouns that all have the same ending. So it follows from this that given that the second declension is different from the first declension, the endings in the second declension are going to be different from the endings in the first declension. Before we can put the endings on the board, we have to make our chart that we put the endings into. If you remember, there are singular and plural endings for Latin nouns, and there are also 5 cases that correspond to different endings in both the singular and the plural. So you're going to have 10 different endings for any given noun, although some of those endings might overlap. So our mnemonic to remember the 5 cases we need on the left here is never go driving alone, Abby. And those cases are nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. We'll write singular and plural up here. And I'm going to put the endings for masculine second declension nouns. If you remember, in the first declension, almost all the nouns are feminine. In the second declension, no nouns are feminine. All the nouns are going to be either masculine or neuter in gender. And remember, gender is something that's assigned to a noun. You have to memorize it when you learn the dictionary entry for a noun. So our masculine endings for the second declension are going to be US or ER in the nominative, singular. In the genitive, you have a long I with a macron over the top to show that it's long. That's not a T, it's an I. In the dative, you have an O with a macron. In the accusative, you have an and then you have another O. In the plural, you have a long I again. Then you have orum. And then you have east, os, east. So if you remember, east and east were actually the dative and ablative plural endings for first declension nouns. So you can sort of guess that something is dative or ablative if it ends in east, even if you don't know what declension it's in, because it's so common as a dative or ablative ending. A couple things to watch out for here. I shows up in the genitive singular and the nominative plural. O shows up in the dative and ablative singulars, and obviously, as we said, east shows up here twice. So these are the endings for our second declension masculine nouns. An example of a second declension masculine noun ending in US is Marcus, proper name. Marcus, the genitive is E and masculine. So let's go ahead and decline Marcus. I'll make our little chart really fast. Okay, our nominative is going to be Marcus. So we took that option, the US option. And our genitive is going to be Marquis, dative Marco, ablative accusative Marcum, ablative Marco. So take a look at that for a second. Then in the plural we have Marquis, marcorum, marquise, marcos, marquise. And of course this is a bit funny because why would you have plural Marcuses, unless two Marcuses were in the room, but there you go, the Marcuses, of the Marcuses, to or for the Marcuses, Marcuses as direct object, and Marcuses for any random use of the ablative. Now, you might be wondering, what about this ER ending? Well, masculine nouns in the second declension just have one of these two endings. There's no special reason for why one noun might have this ending and one noun might have that ending. It just has to be memorized. But to give an example, let's decline the noun puer. Puer means boy, and the genitive is I. It's a masculine, again, obviously. So our nominative is going to be puer. We get from the dictionary entry, we know it's that ER ending. And then something weird happens here. With these ER nouns, you don't actually take off the ER ending. It's irregular, so you just add the I from the genitive singular to that ER, and you're going to do that all the way through. And ta-da! We have declined 2 second declension masculine nouns. There's one more thing I have to note. Some of these finicky ER nouns, these ones, actually change their stem a little bit. So sometimes, instead of having puer, pueri like this, you'll have a noun that has one stem in the nominative and another stem in the genitive. Now remember, a stem is a part of the noun that doesn't change. So it seems impossible that you can have one stem in the nominative and one stem in the genitive. But if you look at the noun ager, which means field, that's the nominative form. Looks very similar to puer, but the genitive is agri. And look at that. There's no E there. It got rid of the E and it's just agri. And if that happens to a noun, you'll know it because it's in the dictionary entry. This is the dictionary entry for ager. And that's why you have these 3 pieces of information that must be memorized. Because sometimes the nominative and genitive forms will in fact have different stems. So here's your 3 pieces of information: nominative singular, genitive singular, gender. And if these 2 stems are different, you're always going to make this the dominant stem, the genitive one. So if you decline it, let's just decline it in the singular really fast. You know what, we'll just do the whole thing. Why not? You're going to carry the genitive stem all the way through. So it would be agri, and then it's going to be agro, not agero. Agrorum, agris, agros, agris. Give you a good look at that. Hope it's readable with these nice, lovely marks here. Alright, now that is second declension masculine. We'll put the neuter nouns of the second declension in a different video because they do have different endings.